Of course, every engine build starts at the cases. So I'm going to get these CR250 cases ready to go back together by popping out the old bearings and studs, shining up the cases, and cleaning up the gasket surfaces. The majority of these bearings can be removed by heating them up and knocking them out from the opposite side. However, with a bearing like this, where there's no access from the other side, that will have to be removed with a blind bearing puller. And then a few of these bearings have retainers holding them into place. So I'm going to have to remove the screws and bolts holding them on. Most of the time, these bolts and screws are going to be Loctited, so I'm not going to even bother trying to get them out without heating them up first. Now for the Phillips screws, the heads strip out really easily, so I'm not going to take any chances with them. Just going to go straight ahead and use the impact screwdriver. I'll have this tool linked down in the description. I tell you what guys, these screwdrivers work without fail 100% of the time. Super handy to have. Alright, I've got a few seals to pop out, and then I'm going to heat up the bearings and knock them out of the case. Alright, I've got a socket that fits just inside the hole on the case here, and I should be able to give it a whack and the bearing will fall out. I'm going to go ahead and give the case some more heat here. And the reason why heat works in this situation is because the case is aluminum, the bearing is steel, and aluminum expands at a quicker rate than steel does. And so why this works is when the case is heated up, the bearing will have more room to slide out. I don't know if you guys caught that or not, but when I flipped the case over, this bearing just fell right out. I really wanted to show you guys that blind bearing puller, but I might need to use it on this needle bearing here. So I'm going to try the same thing on the needle bearing here. Heat it up, flip the case over, and hopefully it falls out. No such luck using that method, so on to the blind bearing puller it is. Hopefully I have one that's big enough. Basically how this puller works is as I was tightening those two pieces against each other, it expanded down inside the bearing. So I've got a firm grasp on the bearing. As soon as I thread in the slide hammer to the puller, I'll be able to yank that bearing right out. Pretty dang slick if you ask me. Works awesome on wheel bearings, linkage bearings, case bearings, you name it. It's got pretty much every size you'd ever need. I'll link this tool down below as well. The last thing to pull off this case are the cylinder studs. Never hurts to go ahead and replace those. To remove them, I'll be using the double nut technique. Sounds dirty, but I promise it isn't. I'll just be locking two nuts against each other on the stud, and that will enable me to thread the stud out of the case. Now I've got this case completely bare, just going to follow the same steps with the other case. Now for the inner clutch cover, I've just got a few seals and a bearing to pull out. Alright, the cases are completely bare at this point, and I've got my work area all cleaned up. The next step is going to be shining these things up. I'm going to start out by putting the Scotch-Brite wheel on the buffer and knocking out as much as I can with that. And then I'll move on to the Dremel tool. And I've got a couple attachments here, some Scotch-Brite wheels and a few brass wire attachments as well. I want you guys to take a good look at the cases right now, how dull and plain looking they are. In a few minutes, I'll have them looking so much better. Man, this Scotch-Brite wheel is really working some magic on the crankcase. However, there's still a lot of rock chips and pitting on the bottom side. So I'm going to try the more aggressive Scotch-Brite wheel and see if I can smooth some of that out. That is simply mind-blowing. It's like a brand new crankcase all over again. I'm going to pop the other Scotch-Brite wheel back on and smooth this thing out even more. Alright, that's about as far as I can get with the Scotch-Brite wheel on the buffer. Now, if only I can get the rest of the crankcase looking this good, I'd be stoked. As you can see, I can't really do much in these tighter areas with the Scotch-Brite wheel on the buffer. So I'm going to bust out the Dremel tool with the brass wire cup. And I'm really hoping I can get that same type of finish. So the brass wire attachments wore down pretty quickly, so I'm going to give the Scotch-Brite wheel a try now. The Scotch-Brite wheel seemed to work okay, just wore down super quickly. So I'm pretty happy with how the brass attachments worked, but the only thing is they left like a brass color on the finish. So I've been trying the regular wire wheels here. I got a straight one and a cup as well. And these seem to be the ticket for getting a similar finish to what I got with the Scotch-Brite wheel on the buffer without the brass color. Alright, I've got the left case all shined up, and this is what it looks like compared to the right case. Pretty dramatic difference. So I used a combination of the wire and Scotch-Brite wheels. Not really a big fan of these brass wheels, they just left kind of a brass look to it. And the regular wire wheels seem to work a lot better. Keep in mind, if you're going to be using these Scotch-Brite wheels, have a lot on hand. They wear out pretty quickly. If you guys enjoy watching the videos, I would appreciate it if you go show some support. Head over to primemx.com, pick up a t-shirt, a hat, stickers. I also have the Scotch-Brite wheel shown in this video over there as well. Without your support, I wouldn't be able to make helpful and informative videos like this. Now it's on to getting the right crankcase and inner clutch cover looking sweet too. And by the way, I'll have all the supplies used throughout the video linked down in the description. I am pretty happy with how these things cleaned up. Now to touch up the gasket surfaces, I'll be using a sanding block with 320 grit sandpaper. Just going to go super light with the pressure. Don't want to take off too much material here. Like I said, I'm going to go really light with the pressure, and I'm going to try to keep the sanding block moving around the case. Don't want to spend too much time focused on one spot, since that'll make it uneven. And then for something like the cylinder base gasket surface, I'm going to bolt the cases together. That way it's easier to sand and I can get a nice even finish on the whole surface. These gasket surfaces should be plenty flush now. Last thing to do is to clean up all the junk from sanding and what was left behind the bearings as well. I always appreciate y'all taking the time to watch through the video, and don't forget, all the supplies used throughout the video are linked down below. I will see you guys later.